Hello viewers, welcome to K Diagnostics, Dio here. Today we have a 2008 Mercedes Sprinter with a 3.0 liter. I'm going to show you how to change the transmission fluid on this vehicle. So we're going to change the transmission fluid. We're also going to change the transmission filter and the oil pan gasket. So I'm going to lift the van so we can get under the van and drain the transmission fluid. So let's go under the van and get this transmission fluid replaced. So we are here under the van, and as you can see, the transmission oil pan is wet. Okay, this is the main reason why we're doing this job, because the transmission oil pan gasket is leaking. When you don't have a leak on the transmission oil pan gasket or on the transmission drain plug, the transmission oil pan is dry. So if your transmission oil pan is wet, you have to suspect your transmission oil pan gasket or your transmission oil pan drain plug. Okay, so we're gonna undo this drain plug so that we can drain fluid out of the transmission, and then we're gonna drain all the fluid that's gonna come out of it. And then when we take it out, there will still be a little bit of fluid. We just have to be careful not to get a shower of transmission fluid. Okay, so we're just gonna carefully remove the transmission oil pan with a little bit of fluid that's going to be remaining in there. So this side has got 3 bolts. There's this bolt over here, this one, and there's another one up there. I don't know if you're going to see it. This bar is probably blocking it. And then we have 3 more bolts on this side. So there's this one over here at this corner. Oh, this one is actually missing. Dang, I didn't see that. Maybe that's what's causing the leak. So the bolt here is missing on this side. So we should have a bolt like this. You know, we have it over here, we have it here, but we don't have it right there. So that's missing, and that's not good. Yeah, I mean, that's what's causing the leak right there. Anyways, I mean, I didn't see this before. I would have ordered it, or I would have gotten it from the dealer. I already got the transmission fluid filter and the transmission oil pan gasket. So we're gonna replace it anyways, and then I'll get the bolt. I mean the holder and the bolt for this corner here. So I'll get that. That's not a big deal. So we have to remove this oil pan. But unfortunately, with everything being on, it's kind of gonna be hard to remove this oil pan because this cross member here is in the way. We're gonna have to remove this cross member so that we can get the transmission oil pan removed. But this is kind of it's at an awkward position. It's kind of a weird design because, I mean, like, you can't get the transmission oil pan out without removing this cross member, which is just a pain. Well, it's not a pain. It's pretty easy to do, but I don't know why they just didn't push it up a little bit to give us enough room to just take the oil pan without removing anything. I mean, I don't know why they didn't push it back far enough so that we could have enough room to remove the oil pan without taking anything else apart, you know. So this is what I did. Since the transmission mount is right there and it sits on this cross member, we just can't remove this cross member without getting the weight of the transmission off of this cross member, okay? This whole piece right here. So what I did is I put a toll jack right there on the drive axle just to hold it up. I know this is not really good. It's not recommended, but you gotta do what you gotta do. I don't have, another area where I can put my jack. So I put my jack over here. I got 2 blocks of wood under the drive shaft, and then I have this toll jack underneath. So what I'm doing is I'm supporting the weight of the transmission with this jack. I know it's putting a little bit of stress on that U-joint, but I mean, that's the only thing I could do, because I was gonna put the jack over here, you know, around the bell housing, but I don't have any room here. So I just had to do it here. I mean, I hate doing it. I shouldn't have done that there, but that's the only spot I have available. Okay, so now we're gonna drain the oil pan first, and then we'll remove the cross member. And I have a bucket here to catch all the fluid that's gonna come out of the transmission. So now let's undo the drain plug, and the drain plug is a liter 6mm Allen wrench. So we're gonna use an Allen wrench. It's a number 6 Allen wrench to remove the drain plug. So I already undid the drain plug. A lot of fluid came out. It wasn't just this little bit of fluid, guys. I didn't realize that the camera was still off, so I'm sorry, that's my bad. But you didn't miss much. I mean, I just removed the drain plug and a lot of fluid came out, and then I looked at the camera, realized that the camera was still off. So you missed all the fluid flow that was coming out of the oil pan. So we're gonna let the transmission fluid drain, and now I'm gonna remove the cross member while the fluid is draining. So here comes the cross member. Alright, so there's no more fluid dripping out of the oil pan. So now I'm gonna remove the bolts that hold the oil pan on the transmission. So there's one over here. And these are torque bits, E30 torque bits. So this one just came out. It is a bolt and a little bracket that holds the oil pan up right here. So now I'm going to remove the ones up here. So you want to remove the ones at the corner first and do the two at the center as you're getting ready to drop the oil pan. Alright, so we have removed this one and the two up front. So now I'm gonna crack the ones in the center. Alright, so now we're gonna remove the center bolts while putting a hand under the oil pan to hold it up, because there's still fluid in the oil pan, and I have a big drain container underneath here so that we don't make a mess, so we don't have a lot of fluid all over the shop floor. So let's undo this one first, and keep your hand under the oil pan. So I got this removed, and now we're gonna remove the other one on the other side. Okay, so I got both of them removed. I still have my hand under the oil pan. So now I'm gonna lower the oil pan slightly here. So we're gonna bring the oil pan down and drain all the fluid. So you're just gonna tilt it a little bit so you can drain all the fluid. Alright, so now what you need to do is you need to lift the oil pan up a little bit, level it, and then pull out. Okay, so drain the fluid first. Once all the fluid is drained, and then lift the other end of the oil pan and then level it and pull it out. Just this way, yeah. So the oil pan. So the oil pan is removed. So now we're gonna remove the transmission filter. So there's no bolt holding the transmission filter in the valve body. So this component here is the valve body. So what you need to do is just grab your filter and pull it down. So the filter is removed. It's always recommended to replace the transmission filter when you replace the fluid. We're gonna let the valve body drain, and while it's draining, we're gonna clean the mating surface here between the transmission housing and the oil pan gasket. So this surface here needs to be dry. So we're gonna clean it really nice. You just need to go around. You have to make sure you don't get any dirt in this area around the inside of the transmission. So we're just gonna clean this surface here. So we're cleaning where the gasket sits. So the gasket surface has been cleaned. So now I'm gonna get the new transmission filter so we can install it. So here is the new transmission filter, and that's the Chrysler part number right there. More power, baby. You're gonna love dealer parts. So now we're gonna get this out of the box. I mean, out of the bag. So here's the new filter. Doesn't it look nice? So you have to make sure there's a gasket, this O-ring up here. So now we're going to install it. So you just need to line it up and then push up. There you go. So this is how you install the transmission filter. Just push it up and make sure it goes up and snug. That's all. So now I'm gonna clean up the oil pan, and then I'll bring you guys back up once I have the oil pan cleaned and ready to be installed. Alright, so I cleaned up the oil pan. So as you can see, it's all cleaned, nice and shiny. So here is the new gasket from the dealer. Okay, this gasket just goes on the oil pan without anything. So don't try to put any gasket maker or anything. You don't want to put RTV on the oil pan, on the transmission oil pan gasket. So just make sure the gasket sits on the oil pan. Okay, so the gasket is seated. This is a brand new gasket from the dealer. So now let's go back under the vent to install this oil pan. So when you install the oil pan, make sure the oil pan is parallel with the transmission, and then push it straight. You have to make sure your gasket doesn't move as you install the oil pan. Okay, so the gasket looks good. So now we're gonna install the bolt. I'm gonna install the one on this side first. So you have to keep your hand on the oil pan as you're installing this bolt. And this little mount here have a hook that goes on the outer edge of the oil pan. And when you're installing these bolts, you have to make sure you start them by hand. So make sure you finger tighten these bolts first before you use your ratchet or your electric ratchet, because you don't want to cross threads the holes on the transmission. So I installed all the bolts for the transmission oil pan. The torque spec for the transmission oil pan bolt is 71 inch-pound. So we're just gonna tighten the rest of them. Make sure you crisscross them as you're tightening them, okay? Don't just tighten this one all the way and then move on to the next one, because you wanna tighten this gasket evenly so it doesn't leak. So I will do that, and then we will put everything back together so we can wrap up this video. The torque spec for the oil pan bolt is 71 inch-pound. Okay, all right, so here's my torque wrench, and I did set it up to 71 inch-pound. So now let's torque these bolts. All right, so alright, so right there, all the oil pan bolts are torqued down. So we're gonna put the cross member back on, and then we're gonna lower the vent so we can fill up the transmission with transmission fluid, and then we're gonna start it and let it idle until it reaches operating temperature. So once the vehicle reaches operating temperature, we're gonna check the level with the dipstick in the engine compartment. So let's put the crossmember back on. So the crossmember has been installed. I also removed the jack that I put on the drive axle. It's always not good putting a jack on the drive axle because the drive axle can spin and then your transmission can come down on you. So it's not a safe practice. I don't recommend it. Don't do it. Find a good solid place where you can put your jack at. But that's the only area I could have put a jack, because I couldn't put a jack under the oil pan because that's what I was removing. And I didn't have any room around this area. It's all covered up. So that's the only place I could have put it on, because I wanted to support the transmission weight a little bit, because I didn't want the transmission weight to be on the engine mount. Okay, so now that we're pretty much down to the end of this video, the other bolt up there that was missing, the dealer delivered it, so already installed it on the other side. I torqued it down. The torque spec is 71 inch-pound, like I said. So now let's lower it and go in the engine compartment so we can fill up this transmission with transmission fluid, and then we're gonna start it, let it reach operating temperature. We're gonna check it one more time, and then we'll wrap up this video. So now let's lower the van. Alright guys, so we're here under the hood and we're gonna find the transmission dipstick tube. It's around here, around the engine dipstick. So if you look closely here, you will see it. So here is the transmission dipstick tube, and this Mercedes Sprinter does not come with a transmission dipstick. The tube has a little cap on it, so this black cap, I just have to pull it out and remove it. So right here, I just remove the cap and I'm gonna sit it over here. And as you can see, there's just the tube itself. There's no dipstick. You have to get the dipstick from either Mercedes or online. I think Mercedes sells the tube for like 60 bucks or 40 bucks. You have to get the transmission dipstick from them. Okay, so I got mine on eBay. I'm gonna show it to you in a minute. So here is the transmission dipstick. You have to buy this separately. It doesn't come with a vehicle. I got mine on eBay. So this is good to have. You can order it online. I think I got it for 20 bucks. You can order it and keep it in your van so you can be checking your transmission fluid by yourself. Or if you own a shop, it's good to have around your shop so you can be checking fluids on the Sprinter vans, okay? It's a long dipstick. So after draining the transmission fluid and replacing the filter, you put everything back together. The transmission is technically empty, not all the way empty, but it's slightly empty because you still have a little bit of fluid inside the torque converter. If you want to drain the torque converter, you can also do that. The torque converter's got a bolt that you have to undo to drain it. I didn't show that part in the video. Just right there on the bell housing, there is a plastic cover that you have to remove, and then you're gonna spin your engine, okay? You're gonna get under the van and spin it from the crankshaft pulley until that bolt is lined up with that little slot, the hole where the plastic cover is, and then you can put your T30 torque socket to remove the bolt. And once you remove that, that's how you drain the torque converter. I did drain the torque converter on this one, but I didn't show the procedure, okay? I mean, it wasn't necessary. It's really easy to do. It's very straightforward. After you drain this, you have to put 5 quarts and half of transmission fluid. So what I like to do is I usually put 5 quarts and let it idle or let it reach operating temperature, and then I can use my dipstick to check the level. If the level is fine, you just leave it there, but mostly it takes 5 quarts and half, okay? And if you drain the torque converter, it might be even more. I think it's like 6 or 6.5, but I mean, if you have your dipstick, just check it until it reaches the right level here, and then you'll be fine. But you have to check the transmission fluid level with the engine at operating temperature, okay? So I'm gonna show you the type of oil we're gonna use. So this is the oil we're using. I got this oil from the dealer. This is a Mercedes / Dodge Sprinter. So I got this from the Dodge dealership, so this is the right type of oil for this. So I'm gonna put a funnel here so we can start pouring some fluid inside the transmission. I'm gonna use my dipstick and stick it in the dipstick tube. So I have put about 5 quarts in the transmission right now. Man, this is a long dipstick. Alright, so the level looks a little bit higher than the cold mark, but we have to start it and let the transmission reach operating temperature, and then we're gonna double check that. So I will start the vehicle and let it idle until it reaches operating temperature. Alright, so actually I will connect the scan tool to the vehicle, and then we're gonna start it and let it idle so it can reach operating temperature. So we want to check the fluid around 180 degrees Fahrenheit, so between 180 and 190. Okay, so I will do that. I'll get the scan tool connected to the van, I'll start it, and then I'll bring you guys back up. We're gonna let it idle until it reaches operating temperature. Alright guys, so the vehicle has reached operating temperature, and as you can see here, our temperature was increasing, and around this area, the drop you see here is the thermostat opening. So the thermostat opened, and here our temperature is dropping. So the max was 200 degrees Fahrenheit, so now the thermostat opened and we are reading around 188 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so our engine has reached operating temperature. So now let's check the transmission fluid. I'm gonna turn off the engine so we can check our transmission fluid. So right here, I don't know if you guys will see, but I'm gonna try to show you the dipstick. So right here, I don't know if you guys will see, although my glove is wet, but our fluid level is around this area on the hot mark. Okay, it says hot here on the dipstick, but this thing is dark, you won't be able to see. All right, so our level is normal, and we did it, guys. Alright guys, so I'm gonna leave it right here. This is how you remove the transmission oil pan on a Sprinter van so you can replace your transmission filter. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to my YouTube channel, K Diagnostics. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.